Welcome back to my Commodore 64 Memories videos. This is where I look at old Commodore 64 software and some of the technical details behind them. Today we have Strangeloop, released in 1985 by Virgin Games. The developer was Gang of Five, the concept by Charles Goodwin, coder Simon Birrell, graphics by Ian Mathias, and musician Chris Blackwell. Gosh, this game came out long time ago, very early on in the Commodore 64 history. And to be honest, when I was playing this way back in the day, I didn't quite get on with it. But we're going to have a look at it in C64 Debugging. We can see here the red bounding boxes around the sprites. We can see when I shoot that the bullets seem to be characters rather than sprites. We have a little raster split here as well, so the top of the game area has a different character set compared to the bottom for the score panel. If I move around a little bit, you can see here that the sprite definition change when moving between the screens. That's just to be expected, really. I don't see anything more than 8 sprites on the screen at the same time, so I don't think that there's a sprite multiplexer. There's quite a variation in the screens, right? And the main character is cheerful enough in terms of sprite frames. Let's have a look at this now in ICU 64. I noticed when I was debugging this tape turbo loader that it seems to call the routine at 4AB several times, or rather it gets to this routine several times before it goes into this indirected jump at 541, which then starts the game. So I saved out the whole of memory from 200 to FFFF so that we can perhaps use that later on for creating a hacked and packed version of this game. Because it's on the tap file and C64 Debug GUI won't load the tap file. So we can see here that we have, I think it's one screen, and we have other data in the memory as well, but I'm really intrigued about this horizontally scrolling text message on the screen. So let's have a look at the character sets, and there we go, straight away we can see in the character set data that the horizontally scrolling text message is actually updating the character set itself rather than trying to scroll the screen. And that's not a surprise because the horizontally scrolling message doesn't use the full width of the screen, right? You've got the oxygen meter text on the left-hand side of the scrolling message, so it's not really possible to split the screen like that to scroll it horizontally. So that's why the character set information is being updated. I notice that the screen color information isn't quite cleared properly as well, so that what should be a high resolution character set or characters on the screen is actually alternating between high resolution and multicolor characters on the screen for that scrolling message. We've certainly got a large number of sprite frames in the first FIC bank as well. Some of them seem to be multicolour, but most of them seem to be high resolution sprites. Now then, let's have a quick scan through memory, see what we can find. Well, the memory is quite full of data. I think there's some partially here encrypted text there at the end, perhaps. But let's have a look for character sets. So we've got the character set at 3000 and the character set at 3800. And those are two character sets there at the end of the first VIC bank. So let's go back to the first few screens in the first VIC bank. And then we can have a look at the top and bottom of the screen using the character set at 3000. There we go, the top of the display area, the main game, and then the score panel down at the bottom at 3800. Because the character set has these updating characters for the horizontally scrolling screen message, you can see that wherever those characters appear in memory, then they also appear to scroll. So notice that when I move between the screens, the sprites don't update. So there's no dynamic sprites, but we have what looks like dynamic character set usage going on, moving between the screens, which is kind of unusual for a game this early on. It's a little bit unusual that games would decompress or copy around their dynamic characters in the character set. So the reason why I didn't get on with this game was the initial really quite challenging, let's put it like that, control mechanism for the main player character. Until you get to this screen here, which is actually near the start. You can fire your bullets, or whatever they are, and then you can get them to bounce off this thing on the, I don't know, it's like an angled corner piece, right? You can get them to bounce off the left-hand side, and then you can actually shoot up and bounce up, and there we go, you can kill that enemy, and then your little space scooty thing falls down from the chain, and then you actually have easier, slightly easier anyway, control over where you want to get through or move around in the level. But the thing is that you only have a certain number of charges, bullets. You have limited air supply, which decreases when you collide with enemies. So yeah, this was a really, really hard game. There are a nice number of frames though, right, for the player character, and also this little space scooty thing moving left and right. It kind of like turns around quite smoothly. The player character moves their head around and then moves their arms up and down to shoot diagonally. So yeah, there's quite a lot of attention to detail in the graphics here in this game, especially for the sprites. Let's just double check that the memory that I saved out from the tape loader will result in the game starting again. So all of that memory, let's do go for AB, which was that entry point. And there we go. The game seems to have started correctly from that saved out data. I think I can go into the game as well. There we go. So not that difficult to save out all of the relevant data after the tape loader has finished. Let's see if we can use a ranged watch store point in the screen memory to see where the screen rendering routine is. This looks like a clear screen routine. Yep, that's the whole clear screen routine, stepping out of that. Okay. The range watch store point has triggered again. And oh look, we've got a store A in directed FB, Y. And that's going to be pointing to the somewhere in screen memory. Stepping over it, also FB, Y seems to then store into the color memory. So this routine here at 86B5 seems to be quite an expensive, actually, character draw routine and also color RAM update routine as well. So it seems to be using or reusing quite extensively, actually, 86B5 to render characters to the screen during the map draw. Yeah, that's rendered a whole horizontal line there using the Y register to count the number of characters, I think it was. And then here again using AE86, what's it, B5 to store or write characters for the doors, for the exits on the left and right hand side of the level as well. So the ICU64 or Vice monitor debugger really makes it a lot easier to find all of these routines, because you can just use watch store points for memory or watch read points or load points rather for memory. I will put a link to the tools that I use in the video description below. So the C64 debug GUI, ICU64 with Vice monitor debugger. They're always very useful tools, and I go over how to use them in quite some detail. Here we are, it started drawing one of the platforms of the level. So as I'm reading through this code, it seems that instead of having what looks like a traditional characters tile map draw, it looks like each screen is composed or drawn by independent routines which draw horizontal and vertical platforms and pipes and doors and things like that. So it seems to be creating each individual screen by reusing these common routines for drawing different kinds of blocks and stuff like that, which is an unusual way of doing it. But that's what it looks like anyway from the initial look through the code. It means that it's going to be harder to find a regular grid map made out of blocks or tiles, and then those get rendered as characters. So if I move between the exits, the memory patterns don't seem to indicate any nice areas in memory being consistently read as like a rectangular block. Let's take the compression tool and just compress up that whole memory dump file that I just saved out earlier on from the tape loader. So what was it called? It was ctemp. That's right, Strangeloop for ab.pig. Just call it sl.pig Strangeloop. That's the start address on the end. That's $4ab. And we also want the processor port, and we want to set the processor port to be like the default. So we'll just put it as 37 or something like that. Hex 37. There we go. Using the -C64 MBU, which is max, border flashing, and the U method of compression, which is like ultra or something like that, which is pretty good. In terms of speed versus size, it's pretty good anyway. And there we go, the compressed version of the game also works. And it's quite small as well. So yes, if you like these kind of technical deep dive videos, then please do consider liking or subscribing to this channel, or sending me a super thanks. They are always very much appreciated. Take care, have a great day, evening or night, wherever you are.